What is the global accurate portrayal of Indigenous people?
I personally don't watch too many Western films just because how many times can you see people of your ethnicity that they're representing be killed, slaughtered?
Every culture should be appreciated to an extent as long as you appreciate the right reasons for the culture and what they do.
Always portrayed as the villain, and not as somebody who's trying to protect the land, their way of life, and fighting off invaders who did horrific things to them.
Appropriate the image of the native culture as long as you're telling a story that's the true story of it.
The movie was so important to me when it came out because it was the first time I'd seen anybody like me represented in film.
So crazy about that whole thing is literally the English were the savage. They were the savages coming to someone else's territory.
A TED Talk is a recorded public speaking presentation, with the TED standing for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. This TED Talk is led by a man named Greg Deal. He talks about his Indigenous experience and his restrictions upon being an Indigenous artist.
Nunaa, Nu Tabudu, Nunumu, Gubatu, Yarawara. My name is Greg Deal. I am a husband, I am a father, I am an artist, and sometimes I'm an activist. And I am also a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. There's a hierarchy that is set within those spaces that immediately tells every child and ultimately every adult that is having education here in the United States, what our value is. So for example, we know who Christopher Columbus is, but we don't know the name of the people that he came into contact with. But that's important because it already tells you he's important and we are not. In fact, it goes so deep that he came here and he thought he was in India, and so he called the people he came into contact with, which was actually the modern day Dominican Republic, he called them Indians, and 500 plus years later, we all know that he was lost at sea, but we still call Indigenous people Indians. I'm working under the premise of what does contemporary Indigenous art look like when it is not informed by a Western buyer's market. So the first piece I created for that is this piece. It is a self-portrait. I was in kindergarten, and it's a seemingly innocent image, but it's titled Prairie Nigger, because that's what the kids called me when I was a kid. I went to an all-white school. I was the brownest kid that was in school, and that is what they called me. And I don't say that to be decisive or blasé about a word, but to illustrate the intersectionality that exists within the language of racism and intolerance. And this is how I experienced it at the age of 5 or 6 years old. And this is not a unique story for Indigenous children. This is happening all over the country. And the reason for that is because nobody has any context to who or what a Native person is. And now you're all responsible for that information. Stories are to be carried, stories are to be held, stories are to be revered. What are you going to do with that information? If you leave here and you decide to do nothing, you are complicit in the actions of those who came before you, who helped you get to this place, your ancestors, whoever they may be. But maybe ask yourself this: are you making spaces for Indigenous people in your home and in your workplace? Are you creating inclusion in those places? Are you realizing that as you walk these lands, that there are people who walk these lands before you? That these are sacred and important things, and that Indigenous people are still here, and that we matter, and we will always matter, because this is the land of our inheritance. This is the land that the Creator gave us. So what are you going to do with that information? Thank you.